Paris is expensive, but it's actually more affordable than you think. Certainly it is an objective city, mostly because the rents are, sky high. But if you're, paying attention to where you're shopping at the local markets, and economizing in certain ways, especially for the fact that you don't need a car. That was one of my biggest expenses when I was living in Panama. When we moved to Paris, it cut out, I don't know, a huge 30% ish part of our budget. Public transportation is very affordable. So Paris can be more affordable than you think. There is no retiree visa program, but the minimum income required to qualify for residency is quite low, especially in European standards. So even if you are a retiree and you're looking at some of the most beneficial retiree programs that are out there in the world, don't cross France off your list out of hand. Yes, many countries do offer more benefits, but they're very rare to find that in Europe. You're mostly going to find that in Latin America or in Asia. Europe has started to create some competitive programs for residency and citizenship, but most of them are quite expensive, so they're not necessarily competitive. They're more competitive than they were when they didn't really want anybody to come in. But France doesn't have any of those kinds of programs, but it can be very easy and accessible to get residency here. So meet with a lawyer, discuss your income, your pension amount, and your particular situation. Odds are there is an easy route for you to gain residency here in France. France may not be business friendly. It is incredibly health friendly. By the World Health Organization standards, France has the best healthcare system in the world. I can attest to it myself. I gave birth here. I've raised a 2-year-old daughter. That means lots and lots of doctor's appointments and illnesses and vaccinations. During this COVID crisis, I think, there are a lot of ways that we could say that countries did good and bad. But what I think Europe and France in particular really excelled at was making testing immediately free and available to anyone at any time as soon as they were able to. I was shocked when I heard that testing was paid this entire time in the US and that it could take weeks in some cases to get tested. So, it's things like that the government definitely has this safety net for its population. And the healthcare is really a huge part of that. And if you are a resident and you are paying taxes here, if you're a resident not paying taxes here, that's a different story. There are many different ways to take residency. But if you are paying taxes, that means you are eligible to receive all of this healthcare, amazing healthcare for free. I will say that I have not been in the healthcare system since I've lived here for 2 years. As I said, I did have a child here. I've had plenty. I went through my entire pregnancy here. I have seen the doctor more in the past 2 years than I think I ever did in my entire life previously. But I was not in the healthcare system. I paid out of pocket for everything. My insurance company will pay me back or has paid me back for anything over my deductible. But I paid out of pocket and it has been incredibly affordable. My entire hospital labor, everything all inclusive hospital stay was 4 days, by the way. In the States, it's only 1 or 2, I know. But I stayed 4 days. That was minimum for an absolutely normal birth. And we paid about 5,000 euros, probably less than that, actually. I'm rounding up. But, all inclusive, the entire pregnancy was for sure less than 10,000. I could probably include her first 2 years of life in that as well. So less than 10,000. And I have looked it up. I've talked to many people. You can't get out of a hospital with a baby in the US for under 16,000 bare minimum. Usually it's more like 30. So that just, sorry for the little digression, but it gives you an illustration of just how affordable the healthcare is, and it has been great. You can go to the American hospital, the British hospital, or any of the wonderful French hospitals. So great healthcare. Definitely, if that's a concern for you, France should be top of your list. And that brings me to great infrastructure. When it comes to road and rail networks, they're all fantastic. France is very intra-connected and also connected to the rest of Europe. You're really never going to have any issues with transportation. Trains can be a little bit expensive. They're not quite as affordable as they used to be. But public transportation is pretty ubiquitous throughout French cities and all European big cities. But public comfort is really the number one thing. And I think that's what it all boils down to with the infrastructure is, people want to, or the government wants you to provide you with parks and little playgrounds and areas that are beautiful and useful. And that all comes down again to the infrastructure and making sure people can get around comfortably and live their lives comfortably. Unless you're in Paris, you'll need a car. So if you're living basically anywhere else outside of the capital, you're pretty much going to have no choice but to own a car. However, if you are in Paris or whenever you do visit Paris, please don't use a car. It's the worst way to get around the city and very expensive. The best way to get around the city is walking, and it's also the best way to explore and see this beautiful open air museum that I call home. But the metro, the buses, and the bikes are all excellent forms of transportation. I try and opt for walking and biking whenever I can. There are many bike sharing programs. The most popular is Vélib. And if you have a Vélib card, you can pick up a bike wherever you go, electronic or mechanic. And it's super affordable. Love it. Great way to get around the city because Paris especially is a very flat city. There aren't a lot of hills in France, in most French cities outside of the Alps. And Paris is definitely a very flat, navigatable city.